In this video, we're going to look at the top 5 most common questions that are asked in store manager interviews, and I'm going to help you plan fantastic answers that are going to get you a store manager job. So let's start with the first question. What times are you able to work? And this is an extraordinarily common question, and it is basically guaranteed to come up. And if you want to be successful in this question, as opposed to completely screw it up, there is a simple formula to follow. So you're going to start by showing off flexibility. What people do wrong on this question is they immediately run into all of the times that they can't work. They set up it very negatively and they cause all sorts of problems for the person interviewing you because they're saying, well, you can't do these times. We need someone who can do these times. Therefore, we won't give you the job. So show off the flexibility. Show off that you're dedicated, and being dedicated is about showing that you can work at the times that they need you to be. They want someone who's totally dedicated to the job, of course, and they want someone that is reliable. And so you got to show some evidence of reliability as well in this question, because that's an extra point that you can really sell yourself on. So what do they actually want to hear? Well, there's a simple list. So they love to hear things about being able to work in the evenings because people would like to be at home at that time. Ideally, after 5 o'clock, everyone wants to go home, but the store is probably still open. Late openings, if the store that you work for opens at particularly late times, maybe it's a 24-hour store, then those are the times that having a store manager in might be quite useful. Weekends is a great time because stores are open on the weekends. That's when the shoppers tend to want to go there because they are themselves not at work. So saying that I am able to work weekends regularly is great. If you can work in the school holidays, bring that up. If you can't, don't bring it up. So always set it up positive. Always talk about what you can do. Don't talk about what you can't do. And for a store manager job, it's quite helpful if you're able to work at short notice so that you can be in to fill, if the deputy manager goes off ill, for example, that you could just come in and sort that out. And really saying yes to as much as you can on any follow-up questions is really helpful to score well on this question. So follow those 3 steps and mention as many of those things as you can, set it up positively, and you'll do well on this question. And let's move on to question 2. How would you deal with conflict between workers? And this is, of course, something that would be a key part of your role as a store manager. And there is a good way to answer it, and it's all about positivity, because positivity just helps you score higher. It's a simple thing on interviews, and it really does work. So start by talking about that you're going to listen. Before you rush in and try to fix everything or start making demands, you're going to listen and clearly understand what's going on. So you're going to listen to both sides, because listening is a fantastically important part of resolving conflict. You're always going to be focused on solutions. You're not going to do anything that's going to make it worse. So talk about in your interview that you are someone that is always trying to find a solution, that you want all workers to work well, and so you're looking to find a solution that's going to solve the problem and maximize the productivity of the workers that you're in charge of. And you can also talk about finding agreement. Find something that you agree on between the people in conflict and that they agree on, and that's one of the ways that you can help get a resolution. A bad answer, and this is the things that people are listening out for, is that you come across as angry, that there is some sort of impatience as well. Like, I don't tolerate, conflict. I expect workers to do this. There's a very dictatorial kind of I'm in charge attitude that does come through very strongly. And there's any sort of negativity, which is you can just sense when you ask this question if someone is uptight, or you can see it in their facial expression that they just don't have any time for this nonsense. And you are going to come across this nonsense, and you're going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to keep your employees happy. So they want to see people giving answers along the lines of the thing on the left, and they want to avoid people that are giving any hints away of actually being on the right hand side of this. So avoid the right, focus on the left, and you'll do well on this question. So let's look at my top tip, which is to script out 3 good examples. So think about, in anonymous terms, some conflicts that you've experienced between workers, perhaps when you're working as a supervisor or an assistant manager, and talk about how you resolve those. And one of those examples is really good if you can talk about a store manager or an area manager and what you learned from the way that they dealt with a particular incident. So it doesn't just have to be an example of what you did. You can also show that you recognize best practice in others. And if you can do that, you'll really score well on this question. So let's go on and look at question 3. What would you do if you thought a shift would be understaffed? And this is a very, very common question, and it's a very common scenario that actually happens in stores. And so there's 3 things that you're going to start by getting into your answer. So talk about maintaining standards. That an understaffed store is not delivering the brand's, desires. If they're coming into a store that is massively understaffed, they can't find anyone to help them, and the checkout lines are a mile long, you're failing the brand. And so you have a responsibility as a store manager to ensure that that store is working at the standards that your company expects. So really drive home that you are going to maintain those standards and the importance of the standards. You're going to talk about working with your team. You're not ordering people to come in, but you're trying to encourage people to come in. You're going to work with what you've got to get the best outcome. And then you need to present an appropriate solution to the problem. And so I'm going to give you some ideas about how to present that solution. So you start by talking about good relationships with staff. If you're finding yourself understaffed and your staff hate you and you phone them asking for a favor, it's not going to be so successful because a lot of your staff will be very casual workers, the chances are, and so they can take and leave work to some extent. So a good relationship with them really helps. So if they think you're a great manager and they have trust in you and you're phoning them and saying, I need a favor, we're going to be understaffed and it'd be really great if we can get you in. If you ought to know the policies, and if there is a thing in the policy that says that you can offer additional incentives, that's one thing you may consider. So talk about knowing the policy. A really great thing to get in there is that you preempt, that you don't find yourself with lots of understaffed situations because you carefully manage the staffing and you have a knowledge of this person is probably going to be off at this time because I'm aware of this issue and I'm going to put in some plans, contingencies for that. So preempting the points where you anticipate that there will be understaffing, perhaps a week in advance, would be really great. So preempting is a great thing to talk about. And of course, practically, you're going to get onto the phones, you're going to speak to your staff, you're going to try and encourage people to be in, and you're going to use the good relationships that you have with staff to maintain high standards at your organization. So if you get those things into your answer, you'll do quite well on this question. And so we can move on and look at question 4. Tell me about yourself. This is probably one of the first questions that's going to come up. And there are, what I say, 4 pillars of a good answer. So you start by talking about your experience. So immediately start talking about your last job unless there is some serious issue with that, which you'd rather not volunteer. So last job is always a good starting point. Mention all relevant work experience first. If you've got limited work experience, you're probably going to mention everything, but every single job that you mention, you have to show how it's relevant. And if you've worked on any particularly important projects or you've been part of any working parties or any groups or training or anything that you've delivered is really great to mention. Accomplishments, anything that you've accomplished professionally or, in your academic life, at school, perhaps, or, outside of your education are all really great things to mention, unless they are a very, very long time in the past. If you're a recent graduate, really focus on your academic accomplishments. Whereas if you've been, working up the store hierarchy, you're going to emphasize your professional ones because, 20 years ago is not so relevant and so important. Your interests are also quite important and they make you seem a sort of more all-round candidate. So you're going to talk about any interests, particularly those that are relevant to the job. Anything that you've done that's quite impressive, if you're an accomplished portrait artist and that's one of your big hobbies, it's impressive. It's going to go in your favor. And also, if you've got any interests or hobbies, link it to the skills that you've gained. For example, if you're in an archery club, there's a lot of team working. You might be involved in training and teaching other people. These are all great skills for a store manager. So look at all your hobbies and interests and see, is there actually any skills that I'm actually developing from this? And you can sell those in your tell me about yourself question. And lastly, you want to finish off by talking about your motivations, because it's better to volunteer this and be in charge of the conversation rather than having it be asked in questions. So you can link your interest to the job, which is a really great way to show your motivation. I love managing teams, I love working with people, and I like working with customers. So, there's some really great explanation of your motive. Show off the research you've done in the company, show that you really, really know the company. You can actually even get this into the tell about yourself, because that's, part of your motivations. I want to work with this company because this company aligns with my personal values. And you may want to talk about, this being the next step. If you're an assistant manager or supervisor, that, you feel that you're ready, that this is the right time to take one step forward in your career. And that's a really important part of your biography and very relevant. So if you get those 4 things into your answer, you should do quite well in this question. So it's literally 4 titles, and then plan out about a couple of bullet points on what you're going to mention on each of these and learn it. So let's look at the last question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And a great phrase, absolutely fantastic phrase to talk about, is that you're looking to move with the business. So as the business develops, you want to develop with it. For example, if you're a store manager in a new area, there may be opportunities in the future when the number of stores increase, and you want to be adaptive to the business's needs. You'll look at what the company can offer you. Does the company have any particular training schemes that you want to take advantage of? And you'll always talk in this answer about being better and better and better at your role. You may want to talk about moving up one level in 5 years' time, but the emphasis has to be on how you're going to be a very outstanding store manager. And when your store is performing very highly and consistently over many years of very strong performance, that you may consider, area manager. However, you have to be careful and know the company, because sometimes talking about moving up can be negative if they're looking to retain store managers. So you have to be very aware of what the company's needs are and what the requirements are of the level above. Does it require a university degree? Do you have one? Are you going to get one, for example? You have to consider all those factors. But the most important thing is to avoid the bad answer. So to assume a promotion automatically is a terrible idea. To say in 5 years' time, I see myself as an area manager. I see myself as a very important person at head office. This is not the right answer. You got to talk about what you're going to do and being amazing at your current role, and how that feeds into, in 5 years' time, hopefully, satisfying your ambitions. Anything that is arrogant or unrealistic or comes across as, I am so unbelievably exceptional, I'm going to get everything I ever want straight away, and you're going to move at a ridiculous pace, because it lowers your credibility. And the absolute worst thing you can say is leaving the company. If you say that in your interview, it's probably all over. So use this video to help you prepare. Use the slides, plan out your answers, and that's really going to help you, and you will ace the interview if you have all of these answers really well planned out, because you'll have very high scores on any of these questions or similar questions, and that's going to massively help you. So finally, best of luck with your store manager interview, and thank you very much for watching.